Hello, welcome to day 8 of Junk Journal July. Today's prompt is observe, and I really wanted to do something related to science. I'm looking in a soul for inspiration with the specimen card that I did previously because I wanted to do something like vintage and grungy but related to science. That's because I took the meaning of the word very literally again. And observe, it doesn't mean only to watch, but also to take that in and register it as being important. And that's a very important step in the scientific method. I'm not going to go into details. But the first step of the scientific method is observation, which means to observe a phenomenon, whatever you're interested in, make a question, come up with a hypothesis and test with an experiment, obtain the results of that experiment, and then observe again and do it all over again. But you don't have to be a scientist to observe things, especially nature. Anyone does it. In fact, I think we are born with the ability to observe our environment. And that's how we've come up with all sorts of things. Not only being scientists, I think art has a big part of observation as well. So I wanted to do this journaling page related to science because, as you may know, I am a scientist and I talk a little bit about it in this channel sometimes. And I have a lot of materials related to channel because I rescued from the recycling bin a large amount of scientific magazines that were too old and they were thrown away. And I've been using them a lot. You saw me first going through folders of papers. Those were my modified magazine pages that we're gonna see again. And so I'm gonna use those. And then I found this train models magazine from the 70s, which has this nice blueprints that I want to use, because to create a blueprint, you have to do a big deal of observation as well. And then I found in this very old, from the 60s, Highlight magazine, a picture of Marie Curie and her husband. And I thought that it was great because I really had this idea in my head of what I wanted to do, but I didn't know if I had the materials, and I had forgotten that Marie Curie was in that magazine. So I was very happy when I saw her again. So here what I'm doing is just aging it's train models, it's not actual trains, magazine, a page with ink. I didn't want it to look too dark, but it was a little bit too white for me. That yellow page I'm using has a fern stenciling that I did when I dyed the paper, and I didn't want to cover it, but I ended up covering most of it anyways. So that image from that science magazine is from, I don't know when, but basically when people started studying electricity, it was everyone was very interested, so people would go and test electricity like to feel it, to get electrocuted. I don't know how to say that word, but to have a little bit of electricity. And I think that's kind of like, observation, the scientific method again. Let's go and try this thing. What do we feel? What does it happen to you when you touch electricity? Those are all observations. That's all part of the process. So that's how I'm taking this prompt. It's like, what do we observe, and how do we understand what we are observing? And you can observe many things. As you know, I'm obsessed with windows. I look out of my window often, and I don't know, sometimes I observe the birds. When do they come to my backyard? What are they doing? What are they planting? They planted me seeds that they're growing now in my garden. I think they're sunflowers. That's very funny. I'm letting them grow. I'm very happy that the birds brought me some functional seeds. So there am I trying to figure out how to do this because I had an idea, but I had no idea how to do it. And so I'm using that page. It's also from a scientific magazine that I modified by adding acrylic paint on it to kind of mute the text. And I added some bronze paint to make it old looking kind of thing. I really like that. I did some markings to simulate coffee stains. That those circles, it's just a little lid that I have that I put paint and then I stamp with it, and it looks like a coffee stain, like a coffee mug stain. I really like that fern, but I ended up covering most of it. So I'm doing a 2-page spread this time. The other page that has the tickets, that was a flyer that my son brought from school. It was black, and when I stained it with coffee, a lot of the ink was released. And I also put a stencil. You can see the leaves there a little bit. And I loved the effect that it had because the black ink didn't go away in the same way in every part of the paper. So it made it very interesting. Then I decided to trim that blueprint, and I'm adding more ink. I'm using a lot of ink. This was a long process. I have to say, this is the longest of all the Junk Journal July's prompts. This took me over an hour. So I did edit out a lot of portions, and this is sped up because we don't want to be here for an hour. But it was a big project. It took me a long time to find the papers, as you saw at the beginning, where I was going through all my papers, and then I'll continue to go through papers in a little bit. Then I wanted to age this doily, and I think I put too much ink. I didn't want it to be that brown, but it doesn't look bad at the end. Also, you can use doily as a stencil, especially if you have like a hard one. Like mine are kind of like a plasticky paper. It's not thin paper, it's a thick plasticky paper, and those can work as a stencil. I did it on purpose on that page there. I wanted to leave a mark. And so now I'm adding my art glitter glue because this particular doilies don't like glue stick, and also I think it's easier if you have a fine point to add your glue than just to add glue stick in between all of those little holes, because it's gonna be a mess. So then I'm doing more inking. There's gonna be a lot of inking here in this video, and I'm gonna glue Marie Curie. So there she goes. I like that they did this drawing with her husband on the background, like he looks smaller and it's all about her. I really like that. Especially because this is from 1960, and it was a whole story about her. I think it's very important to highlight women in science, well, women everywhere. Although I could have cut the husband, but I'm leaving it there. They work together. they were a power couple. So now I'm adding the other piece of the doily. This one I didn't ink that much. Well, I didn't want to, and then I go and I add more, but it's less brown because I liked it to be more clear. to contrast the black. Then I grabbed my encyclopedia book. This is also from the 60s. And I'm gonna cut out from that page the microscope and a telescope, because those are two instruments that are used for observation. So you look at small things with a microscope. Oh, then I'm realizing that I cut two pages together. And then you look at big and far away things with a telescope. And then I'm cutting that map there because I want that rosette, I don't know what's the name. And then I'm going through this other magazine. Those fly eyes over there are just beautiful. I should have added them because observation, but I wanted a null. I wanted to limit my color use. I wanted this to look very grungy for some reason. I don't know why. I can explain why I want things sometimes. So then I'm fussy cutting very roughly. They both have like a fussy edge around, so I'm not very concerned about it. And then I'm cutting the words. I love that Pilots magazine has this section about things you wonder about, and it explains to kids like how things work. And I think that's how it was explaining how X-rays work, and they were talking about Marie Curie. So I really like that quote. And then this I cut out from the Train magazine, Observations. So I'm trying to figure out how I'm gonna do this. But first I'm gonna start gluing my things. Oh, I forgot that thing. I'm adding that because also, how did we figure out what's north, what's south, what's east and west? By observing. Everything we know, it's been observation based. So it's a very important step of our human condition, I think. We just sit and observe and say, oh, the stars are moving this way. And then we figure out that there is a magnetic field on the earth, and then we know where there is the north and there is a south. It all started because someone wondered about something and made an observation. It really is like that. The most simple things. Like if we go back to mythology, they didn't understand things. Oh, I'll go back to mythology in a little bit, but now I'm gonna start adding white acrylic paint around the edges of those images because I wanted to mute them and I wanted them to kind of be part of the page. It really worked nicely with the microscope. With the telescope too, but the universe is black. So it had that very strong black there. But the microscope looked good, like it's part of the page. And then I'm doing it. It's funny because I inked all around the edges and then I'm putting white paint, but I like that effect that has both. And then I started adding paint in more places. I put too much paint on my fingertip there. I should have kept doing it with the brush and then with my fingertip, but that's okay. And then I did some markings. This was fun. I enjoyed this process. As always, I enjoy mark making. I don't use paint often in my journals. I would say probably this is the first time I do in a page. And then I'm gonna start working on my specimen. I have a video on how I make this. I'm gonna link it down below. So I made that template and then I just use that template to cut out a card that has the shape of a file folder. but it's not a file folder, like it doesn't open, it's not a folder. But I just like the little tab. I always struggle cutting this part. I used to do it only with my paper trimmer, but then I would cut more. But also my scissors didn't do a good job, so I don't know. I need to figure that out better. And see, I had to even it out, but that's fine. The template's like a general idea, and then you can reshape it. And I like to add a graph. This is my method to make it. I like to put a graph and then the specimen inside the graph. It's just the way I like it. And let's go back to mythology. When humans created mythology, it was mostly because they didn't know how things were happening. There are storms, there's a sun, what's going on. So they made that observation. They observed that every so often the sun will go away and then it will come back again. There will be thunders and lightning, and where are they coming from? So the easiest way to think it was, oh, maybe there is a god for it. And that's why Roman and Greek mythology have, every god has like a nature power, if you want. It was all based on observations of the natural world. So then I was trying to find a graph paper. I had picked out that coffee dyed graph paper before, but I just realized that I want a small amount, so I went on my box trying to find a scrap of graph paper, but I only found that thicker one that it's almost cardstock, and I didn't like how it looked like. It was way too thick, so I ended up cutting a piece of the big graph paper. I just needed a small amount. So I'm putting together my specimen card. Oh, I forgot to mention, I'm using texture cardstock for this. You can use anything. I would recommend cardstock, something thicker than just paper. And it's very fun. I really love making these specimen cards. I haven't made them in a while, and now I remembered how I love them. I don't know why. I think it's because they are tiny. And they ended up looking good when you put your specimen in there. So I'm adding research there as a title, so the word research. And for this, I'm gonna use another piece of the science magazine that had those animals there, and it had that butterfly for insects. So it has a little description about, it just says insects. And the butterfly, it's inside a circle. And I really like it. So I'm trying to see where I'm gonna put it. I wasn't sure about that paper that I had modified. I did a lot of color marking, and this was a more grungy style, but I think those colors were fine. And then of course I added a butterfly sticker, and I'm gonna be adding a lot of stickers because I think it needed a little bit of color. I really like how those yellow flowers look like in there. You can do just one specimen. I always like to add more things, and then I'm gonna do a postage stamp because I don't know, I like it. And number 8 for today, I really liked how this looked. That 8 was perfect. I don't think a stamped a number as perfect as that one so far. So here I'm trying to figure out how I want to add it. I want to do like a flip out kind of thing. I don't know why. I'm not writing anything on the paper itself, but I am writing observe on the back of the specimen card, and I just want to add it at the edge of the page. And I'm using that black and white stripes washi tape that I thought it would go well with the theme, although a floral one would have been great too. I just wanted to keep the black and white theme. I'm having a hard time finding it. And then I'm adding it there. Of course, every time I use washi tape, especially for this, that it's going to have structural function, I add extra glue. That washi tape in particular doesn't have a lot of glue for some reason. But regardless, I add glue to any washi tape. So then when I did that to see my page, I lifted my journal, I lost the words. They fell out of my desk. And then you'll see me trying to find one of the words, or maybe done, because I maybe cut that out. So I'm adding my quote. Things, oh, see, I didn't find the you've there. Things you've wondered about. So let me know down in the comments, what things have you wondered about? What do you observe in your daily life? Like, do you observe when the birds are migrating? Have you noticed that they are migrating later or something like that? Or do you like to look at the stars and see how they move? Or do you like to pay attention to when your flowers start flowering? Or when the first leaf on your favorite tree becomes yellow? Do you pay attention to all those details? You are making an observation every time you do that. And it could be a scientific observation. Why not? So I stamped the number 8 on the bottom. You didn't see when I did that because my journal was too low. So there we have it. I really like it. It was a long process, but I like the end result. Thank you for watching. I'll see you next time. Bye.